It seems that nations and tribes have always invaded other nations and tribes. And what I'm going to try to do is compress a resource-based economy into just a few words. And if you have difficulty understanding this, you probably won't be able to put it together. Since all tribes have been invading other tribes, more or less, most of them have, then it seems that war is a process for gathering resources. And if you keep losing thousands of people in a war to maintain your resources, and wars seem to occur almost continuously, you're losing your best people. And it would seem to me that nations should not have difficulty grasping the fact that the answer lies in sharing the Earth's resources rather than keep taking away resources from others. And all that the Venus Project proposes is that we share the Earth's resources and give up this idea of war. It's really, in the long run, you still have your kids. Your buildings aren't blown up, and the losses are so tremendous. And this is, in a nutshell, what the Venus Project is about. I'm going to simplify it again. Most nations took land away from other nations, or their sheep, or their buildings, or their women. A resource-based economy is making all things available to all the world's people. It seems to me that if they don't do that, they will continue along the same lines. So if you want to discuss a resource-based economy in just a minute, you can do it that way. If they don't understand that nations have taken things from other nations, they won't grasp it. If they don't understand that, get your history books out and read it, and that's what you'll find. I'm leaving out Sunny Day in May. I'm leaving out all the propaganda. Now, also along with that, if you're interested in more detail, it seems that patriotism and loyalty to country is a quick system for getting people in line. All you have to say is God, country, and America. Those few words will line up people. If you can condition people to respond to just a few words, you can get them to line up and obey you. As I see in Dracula films, Count Dracula says, "Obey me." He always goes like that, says, "Obey me." And that's what nations do. They want their populace to obey them. And the simplest way to do it is to say, God's on our side, or this is the greatest country in the world. A few of those things. Whereas in the Venus Project, we understand the history of war, why it comes into existence, the factors that shape human values, and the reason for nations demanding simplicity. Without simplicity, it'd be difficult to control people. So simplicity is God's on our side. If you love America, you'll sacrifice yourself for this country and its future. And so those simple statements like that, in France they call it hoopla, or they also call it thought control. Thought control is when people can be conditioned to respond to symbols fast, but intellect is difficult. If you let people go off and think about things, they want to know a lot of questions, they want to have answers, so they say, people are jealous of our way of life, and they would like to take our resources away from us. I would see no reason offhand for any nation backing away from a resource-based economy, because the sharing is immediate. Now, if a nation doesn't have resources, or much resources, I would say that maybe Sweden has a lot of technicians they can lend to undeveloped nations. and the undeveloped nations may have resources, but the undeveloped nations may not have the technical skill to develop their resources. So when I say sharing of resources, that means personnel, equipment, factories. If the United States has most of the world's factories, we would like to distribute factories different places so we don't have to ship stuff great distances. And all I wanted to say is that's essentially what it's about. All your laws and everything else are made about maintaining our position of advantage. That's what all the laws are about. All the laws man-made in a court of law or by lawyers are to maintain this system. The laws do not call for sharing with other nations because we feel we're in a position of advantage and we can demand more for less. We don't have to put out much. China will turn out lots and lots of skirts and socks and neckties and clothing for a much lower price than we can, because they have an overpopulation and they need our purchasing power, or they need objects in this country. Buying objects in this country is really too expensive for China. So China will have to make its own automobiles and its own vacuum cleaners at a price the Chinese people can afford when they're ready for it. But if you continue along these lines, the most powerful nation will use their leverage to either to dominate other nations, and if they work for less, they needn't invade the nation. They can still maintain their position of advantage by paying less for services. So I'm saying this, finally, that if we really want to save our people and cities from utter destruction and the earth from nuclear dust and all the other pollutants that we've come up with, we must somehow learn how to bridge the difference between nations without any nation maintaining overview. Or it wouldn't be the United States that would be telling them what to do. It would be a joint venture understood by all nations, the sharing of resources. Now that can't be accomplished equally because we have better transportation in America, and therefore we will have to share some of our transportation with countries that don't have the means, the railways or the highways. Do you understand that? We will have to develop other countries so they can transport goods and services. We would have to develop hospital systems. In other words, if you make a hospital system to handle the dominant disorders in different countries. Do you understand? There are physical disorders in different countries. In America, you have a lot of psychological disorders. In Spain, you might or might not have as many. So your hospitals should be designed for the dominant disorders in the area. But the hospitals have to be prefabricated and well equipped with everything any other hospital has. If you don't do that, you're going to set up disruptions. So you will also have to explain to their doctors what they need, ask them what they need, and what they would need to fulfill their practices. And that goes for, we will teach them, or they will teach us, what the best industrial process is for growing food. Others with a very low crime rate will tell us what they do. So by sharing ideas, we can almost eliminate all crimes if we share resources equally, not some resources for some countries. Now, countries that do not join with us, which there will not be part of that system. And we feel that if they don't want to join us, in time they will be pressed to join us. So when I say that, I mean the standard of living of the countries that join us will be higher than those that do not. And so that's it. That's what I have to say. Now you can use that to describe a resource-based economy fast. And they say, well, what if somebody wants to invade our country? What do you do if you don't have armies and navies? We don't dispel with armies and navies until we have the basis of a resource-based economy. Because people would like to come here and take everything away if we dissolve our armies and navies. So we have to have many of the number one nations that join us, possibly France, England, Germany, will probably join us, because the advantages are enormous. And they have countries will undergo a time of less extravagance, only during the transition. Then we will turn out lots of products and make sure that there's more than enough. So I would imagine that no country would try to invade us if we had the major nations in, and we maintain our military until this is worked out. Otherwise, if you just gave up everything, you might be invaded by China or North Korea or some other country. Do you understand that? I don't like the idea of keeping a military, but I don't know how else to deal with it during the transition. And during the transition, there will be prisons, police, because you have to do that until you get stabilized. Because people have so many different values, you cannot reach, with present-day language, all nations. But you might be able to reach them with film, showing them the kind of buildings they'll live in, water access, access to food, and the concept of the library spread throughout. The library is the easiest way. You can say, although books are available, everybody accepts a library. Then you can say musical instruments are available, cameras are available, lawnmowers are available at the centers of distribution. So you'll have to show them why you're doing that, because you have to pay insurance against theft. Now you also have to pay a fee to have cameras, heat sensors, gas warnings in your house. You pay a company for protection. And when you add up all that money that the middle class and the wealthy have to pay to put bars on their windows, guards, insurance, that's billions of dollars. We can take care of poverty that way. There's no poverty. Now, people that are disadvantaged in the system during the transition will have a somewhat harder time. I can't control that. Once we establish things, the physically ill will be maintained and cared for without filling out any forms. They go right to the center. When they need treatment, they're examined and helped. But they don't fill out forms. The only time you